Hello, in this video we're going to go over how to implement the Pro interactive elements. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a blank game object. So do that, game object, 3D object, I'm just going to make a cube. So I have my game object that has a collider on it. Your game object needs a collider for the element containers, for the elements to actually work. So with that said, I have my object, so now I got to make my element. So if I right click, go up to create, we'll see that a new folder has appeared, elements. And we want to make our tabula rasa, our blank element. So we go over here and we make a blank element. This is going to be our starting element. And then I'll just call it, well, let's do some kind of water. So we'll just call it square water for now. It's kind of lame, but just want to get the point across. So I want to make a new type of water. So element layer, I would change that to element. That's good practice to change your elements to all the same layer. The type obviously is not fire, it's going to be water. And then if I wanted to change these values, I could. So for instance, if I wanted to make this water freeze really quickly, I might make the freeze temp higher. Or if I make the water evaporate really easily, then I'll make this lower. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at its default, go back to my cube, and now I have a starting element, so now I need an element container. So this is the one script you need to add. So you add that. And then two ways you can add the starting element. You click and drag this over to the starting element, or you could hit the circle here, and then what you'll see is all the elements that you could start as, that you've created in your game. Here we want square water, and there we go. So once we defined our starting element, we need our starting element's values. So that's another scriptable object. So we right click, create elements, and we want water values, right? Because we made our square water, it's starting as water, so we go to water values. And then we just label it whatever, square water values. I know it's lame, but it's just to get the point across. So here's the values for our water. It decreases fire and ice and how it expands. You know, if I wanted this one to expand to ice at a very, let's say, we could just say 1, right? So now it's going to be really tall. I can just change that. Go back to my cube. Take my square water, put it in the water. Alternatively, I can click here and then I have all my water choices. So here I only have 2, either the default or the square water values. I want the square water values. Alright, so I have my square water here with square water values. And you'll see, okay, I want to see water to ice. Now it'll do that, right? And this is different than if I go to this one and water to ice. See how it's changed differently? But I'm getting an error. Ice values doesn't exist here. So what it's telling me is, hey, you're changing this thing to ice, but the ice values are unknown. Now in the game, it's just going to create an ice value scriptable object and we set it to defaults. But maybe you don't want that. So on objects like this, like water, which you anticipate that are going to change to ice, we could also create an ice scriptable object. So go create elements, ice values, then square ice values. Here, right, I could assign the ice material, I could assign its properties, and then even its scale when it melts back to water and how quickly it does. Maybe it's a slow melting thing you want to make here. In any case, I go back to ice values and then I put the square ice values in there. I clear these out and now I'm okay. So the other thing is maybe then I could, let's make sure it's working, right? I could do ice mat. So now it should also assign to that ice material. So let's reset it back to the original. Okay, and our created object here, maybe then I also want to change the ice to water scale. See what happens there, right? And then we have our cube. We reset it to original, that resets it back to 111. We can see what it looks like ice to water. Well, that doesn't make sense when it's already water, right? Water to ice, this is what it looks like frozen, and then melting, it looks like that. So maybe we need to change that. We just change that to our values. And then we just reset it. But that's it. That's all you got to do. This is also a good time to draw your attention to this ice object in the scene. As you see, the renderer is on a child object, which is completely fine. The system will check for if it's on the child object and default everything like that, so feel free to use that practice if you want. Everything still works the same. I would like to just thank you for your purchase of the the Pro Interactive Elements version here. Your contributions does help me in many ways, financially and motivationally. I do intend, like I've mentioned elsewhere, I do intend to eventually create a full weather system mod of all of this. So I have a few more interactions to go. But the Pro version here is what I'll keep updated with the scriptable objects. I feel that's a good way going forward. If you have any suggestions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section here or contact me on my various social media, and I will do what I can to implement and help you out in making your games. Cheers.